Welcome, everybody, to another Bangers and Classics podcast, which involves me, James Ruppert, and him, David Malloy. And where's David been this week?
Oh, I've been a few places, not with
Yeah.
any great note, but in my somewhat limited travels, I have seen some classic cars just for a change. Shall I tell you what they are?
Yes, please.
Okay. Well, we'll start off with a Ford Capri 2.8 injection. It was a blue one. It was on a low loader, looked presentable. I couldn't tell if it had broken down or if it was being transported for some other reason, but it looked pretty good anyway. Then I saw an MG Midget on the road, a late one, 1979 or 80. Very, very good condition indeed. The owner wasn't afraid to use it in slightly inclement weather either, which I think you'd approve of particularly.
Absolutely. Well done to him.
Indeed, yeah. And the same day, I also saw an Allegro from the same period. So,
Goodness me.
yeah, a re-registration Allegro. It looked well used, but it was being well used. So again, well done, whoever you are. And then I saw a very, very, very pristine example of a car. I'm going to give you a clue as to what it was. It's Frothy Man.
Right, that would be a Cresta then.
Yes, well done, sir.
Hey.
Hey, in case for younger listeners, Cresta was a soft drink, what you in England would call pop, what in Scotland would be called ginger for some reason that escapes me. It was a particular brand of it called Cresta, and their catchphrase was, "It's Frothy Man."
It certainly was.
Anyway, yep, there was a two-tone Vauxhall Cresta. I think it was a PC, and it looked in absolutely spiffing condition. It was parked next to a filling station, so I presume it was being used. No one in this at the time, but it just hadn't been teleported there. But not only that, a few days later, I saw a fairly, I would say quite well used Lancia Integrale 8 valve, quite an early one.
Mm.
It was parked off the road at a house, but again, it looks to be in regular use, given where it was, given its condition. I thought, yeah, there's mud on the tyres, etc. That's been out on the roads. Probably off the roads too, by the look of it. And then today, I saw a nice blue, late chrome bumper version MGB GT.
Right.
Parked in the driveway. Again, it was quite inclement weather, and whoever owned it had taken it outside, so again, must have been using it, one presumes. And finally, to cap this bag off, I had another sighting of the Peugeot 309 from last week, and this time I nailed the registration number. And I can tell you, it's a 1991 309 GRD, which is a current MOT. It's an MOT into next year. Good condition, and you're going to like this, James.
Yeah.
At the last MOT, it had covered nearly 175,000 miles, and it still looks good.
Golly gosh. Excellent.
I've looked at the MOT history, and it's had a fair bit of work done to it to keep it going. But yeah, fair play to whoever owns it. Well done indeed. So what have you seen?
I haven't seen a great deal, but I've been bringing joy and pleasure to people's lives.
I'll make a change.
It certainly does. There was a bit of a tailback on the tiny little roads where I live because there was a coach. It was dolphin coaches were coming down, so all these people were scattering all over the place. And I'm in the Baby Shark, which of course is extremely narrow, so I don't really have to worry too much. I don't have to climb into the hedgerows or anything. But the coach driver stopped when he came to me, opened his door, and said, "You, sir, have a magnificent BMW," and that was very nice. I mean, that may have been a pickup line, but it was very, very nice of him to say that. And appreciate me being out and about. So it's always nice to get that the other way around when people give you the thumbs up or say nice things to you.
I was wondering if you got your autograph.
Well, very, very tempted, I should think, but I think he would have created more of a tailback if he'd spent more time there. That was quite nice. It's always nice when somebody compliments you on something, which is.
I wouldn't know, mate. I wouldn't know, James.
No,
no.
Okay. No. Otherwise, I've just been keeping it up for bangers. I'm looking at 1990s cars a lot. I'm seeing a lot of Escorts. A 1992 Escort in reasonable condition, but again, like we're seeing, these are people using them. They're not show cars. They're not buffed to extreme. Someone's in it and they're using it to get somewhere and do something, which is fabulous. And I parked yesterday next to a Peugeot 106. And you don't see an awful lot of those anymore, but they're still about. But you reflect on what a marvelous little car it is. It's very nicely designed. It's a very simple car, but it's whereas cars are actually quite fussy these days. It really does look the part, and it's very sad to reflect that these tiny little cars, these little town centre assault vehicles that we sort of used to take for granted are now don't make any sense, do they, for the manufacturers because of CO2 requirements? It isn't worth their while to make these. But this one,
No.
it was 20 years old, and apart from a few dents, it was fantastic. And again,
Right.
it's a car that somebody's using, and it's only worth a few hundred quid, but it shows the way forward. And I think in a way, I suppose that should be the theme of today's show is that you can use used cars. Also, yeah, I saw a Honda Civic Estate. It wasn't an aero deck, which I'm quite familiar with, but again, it was one of those great '90s cars which go on forever and will certainly do a job. So that's what I've been doing. I've been keeping my eyes open for hard-working 1990s vehicles.
All right. Well, I know a chap who's got two 106 rallies.
Really?
Yeah, he's got a white one and a
Mm.
blue one, and he switches them around. He uses one for a few months
Yeah.
a year, then jumps into the other one. It's the white one that's in use just now because he and his older brother run a hotel, and I pass it. I was at school with his older brother. That's how I know them pretty well, and I go past the hotel when I'm going into town quite a bit. And yeah, the 106 rally's usually there, parked outside. Very nice condition, I must say. He looks after it. Very much an enthusiast, and it depends on what month it is, whether it's the blue one or the white one. But at the moment, it's the white one,
Yeah.
and he's using that to go to work. I know he doesn't just park it at the hotel
Mm.
because he doesn't live too close to it. I don't think anymore.
So he must have a very enjoyable drive to work then in the morning.
I imagine so.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Anything else, James? You've seen?
No,
It's been quite a sad period. We've lost a few people, haven't we, lately?
we have
That we quite
unfortunately. That's
liked.
right.
Yeah, obviously Jimmy Greaves. Now,
Yeah.
you think, a Scotsman praising Jimmy Greaves? Well, yes, of course. Jimmy Greaves was a fantastic footballer. I was too young to see him play, but I principally remember him from the St. Greavesy TV show. But what's his link to cars, you might be wondering? Well, there is one, which is why he's in Bangers and Classics. Apart from the fact that he seems to be a nice bloke, he did compete as a co-driver with Tony Fall
He
on
did.
the 1970 London to Mexico World Cup Rally, and they finished sixth in the Ford Escort 1850. It was a tragedy he never got to play in the World Cup final. If anyone's interested, the story is he had hepatitis earlier that year. He got back to fitness. He missed a lot of games that season, and he got injured. And he probably wasn't quite at his best because, obviously, the effects of the illness. The one season that he wasn't quite at his absolute majestic best was the season England got to the World Cup final because he should have played in it. Let's be honest.
Well, absolutely. He was also one of those players where he would get 30 to 40 goals a season, which these days is sort of unheard of. Strikers get 15 goals a season and get Humpty Dump million quid.
Well,
And he was just there, always there or thereabouts. He was a fantastic player. Had a lot of great cars, as you pointed out, a lot of Fords. I did write about him in World Cup Cortinas, and yeah, he was. He was as you say, he seems like a very down to earth, and he was funny.
he was,
As
yeah,
well. He was
definitely.
extremely funny.
He had a good sense of humour, did Jimmy,
Yeah,
and that's for sure. But you said about this amount of goals he scored. People need to remember as well that when he played, pitches were like a bog.
yeah.
And defenders could basically legally
They
kick the
could,
lumps out to attackers. It was almost GBH in a football pitch
yeah,
every week.
they could basically murder you, couldn't they? Really?
Yeah,
So
just about, yeah. So, I mean, however impressive Messi and Ronaldo's stats are, and yes, they are impressive, they wouldn't have achieved what they achieved if they were playing back then. Their career wouldn't have lasted as long, I don't think. They'd simply been kicked out of the game.
yeah.
But anyway, that was Jimmy Greaves. We also lost a chap we talked about recently, James, and I believe you're in a good position to mention him. That's
Well, yeah.
Clive Sinclair.
Absolutely, yeah. No, we did. No, we did a fair bit on him quite recently, and he is one of those. The word hero is used quite a lot and without very much justification.
Indeed.
But actually, he was an extremely clever bloke. He was very far thinking, and it's a shame he sort of became the butt of jokes. But
Yeah.
really, he didn't deserve any of that at all. And we've been through the C5. It was a marketing issue, really. And if the C5 came out today, actually, he would be. People would say he was a genius and say,
Yeah.
"What a wonderful car," and and that's what people should have. So it wasn't his fault, but he was always committed to that. He also had the Zyke as well. And actually, the C5 was a sort of a downgrade of his C1 electric car concept, which really was a car that was electric. But even he found out that developing a car from scratch is incredibly expensive. And that's why that didn't happen, and that's why we got the C5. But it doesn't matter. He did things, and he was extremely clever bloke. Pocket calculator,
Mm,
the Sinclair ZX. I mean, anybody who's into computing had one of those and learned how to program. So his legacy is quite incredible. And according to his
mm.
daughter, I think in the last weeks of his life, he was still working on things, still in his workshop, still doing things. So that's the way I'm sure he would like to be remembered. Always trying to do the next great thing.
Yes, absolutely.
Mm,
That's a very good eulogy for him.
mm,
And he was a man who did great things. He was ahead of his time, and he gave
yeah,
people affordable computers, starting with the ZX80 through
yeah.
to the ZX Spectrum. And I mean, these things. This is my era we're talking about. They
Mm.
sold like hotcakes. I
They
had a
did.
Spectrum.
Yeah.
And a friend of mine, actually, the game published for the Spectrum. I moved on from it into a Commodore because I could program it better for some reason. I could program in 6502 machine code better than I could in Z80. He was a very, very clever bloke, was Clive.
Mm.
And yes, he doesn't deserve the butt of any jokes whatsoever.
No.
Bangers and Classics Hall of Fame, if we had one, we'll
Yeah.
put him on it. I think we should. And on that somewhat somber note, I think we should take a very quick break. This is Bangers and Classics, hosted by Lord Rupert of Savile Row and David Malloy, the man who's been over more bars than Sergei Bubka. And welcome back after that short break. We're going to go into the news section now, and we're going to limit it to a very, very brief mention of a rather unfortunate saga about Bluebird K7, which isn't, of course, a car, it's a boat. It was the boat of Donald Campbell, who broke both the world land speed record and the world water speed record. And tragically, Donald Campbell was at the wheel of K7 when he met his demise on Coniston Water in 1967. Most of Bluebird remained down there for the next 34 years. It was then recovered, and believe it or not, it was actually restored. It needed a lot of new parts added to it to get it to a running condition again, but run it did. And unfortunately, as we speak, it's being broken up because there's a dispute between the people who restored it and the museum where it's to be displayed. Now, I'm not going to take sides in this publicly. I do favour one side, but that's neither here nor there. But what I would say is this, and I think this is an indisputable fact: an operational K7 has the potential to delight, enthrall, enthuse, and inspire in much the same way as the Vulcan that was returned to the skies for several years. And to me, its appeal is diminished if it's only a museum piece, irrespective of whether or not it's in bits or intact. What do you think of that, James?
Well, yeah, I think you're right, David. I think for anybody who isn't quite as old as me, it's hard to comprehend how what a big story all the Bluebird
Hmm.
things were.
Hmm.
And I've just been reminded actually that I did have Bluebird toy. But it was a bit like a science experiment in that it was basically solid rocket fuel in it. So you could there was a car and there was the boat, and you could actually insert this basically a firework. That's exactly what it was. It was like a firework, and then you would light it. And this was a child's toy. How fantastic was that? And yeah, I'm sure I destroyed that at some point in the '60s. But yeah, I mean, yeah, Donald Campbell and Bluebird was like the biggest story ever for. It just went on for ages, and
Hmm.
he was, a true hero. A man daring to go faster than
Yeah.
anybody else. So,
Yes.
yeah, it is a remarkable story. It bears retelling. There's lots of lessons for us to learn, and certainly, as you highlight from this current situation, there are lessons to be learnt from this, and
Hmm.
it does seem to be quite childish, really, doesn't it?
It's just my
Mm.
abiding emotion is one of sadness.
Mm.
Really, that's it at the moment. I mean, obviously Donald Campbell, his father Malcolm Campbell,
Yes.
was a
Mm.
great world record holder before him. We had a long tradition of that in this country.
Yes.
Going back
Mm.
with Seagrave,
See,
Combo,
yeah.
Parry Jones.
Mm.
I actually wrote about this some years ago, just on my own website. Just wasn't a commercial piece, and I had to amend it because of the recent shenanigans, shall we say,
Yeah.
to take out the last paragraph. It's not such a hopeful ending as it had.
No.
And I can only hope that the situation resolves itself and we get to see Bluebird run again and run again in Coniston Water. That would be great to see. We'll leave it at that, James. I don't,
Yeah.
as I say, we don't want to become embroiled in this because it's a tough enough battle for those involved in it. I'm sure, without semi-qualified or unqualified commentators sticking their oar in.
Exactly.
No pun intended. Anyway, so we'll move on to this week's banger or classic. And we're going to go populist this week, just for the heck of it. We're going to go back to the days of the late 1960s. And this was the car you always promised yourself, James. It's the
Really? Is
Ford
that right?
Capri.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you reckon? Is it a banger or is it a classic?
Well, what it is obviously a Cortina in drag. Really, as One Car Magazine described it, and actually that's pretty much it, isn't it? It's Ford were masters of marketing, and effectively that's what it was. It was a very clever marketing job, but what a lovely looking vehicle it was at the time. So
Hmm.
it is absolutely a classic. I remember spending many happy days in friends' ones. I never owned one, but it was still a big car in the 70s. You could still, and obviously they still made it into the 80s. And I think they kept on making it for the UK market, didn't they? Whereas elsewhere it sort of died off. But we kept on buying them because we love them. So,
Yeah.
yeah, for me, it was absolutely a classic.
Yeah, I mean, basically what you got was it was an affordable taste of American muscle car.
Yeah,
The style of a muscle car, but not always the performance. You could get a 1.3 litre guys, which wouldn't pull as good enough a rice pudding, but it was cheap, it was economical, it was stylish, and of course, as you went up the range, then you got into the realms of the 3 litres. Which had a decent turn of speed and a very
mm,
fruity exhaust note. Initially with the Essex V6, which was the 3 litre, and later on with the Cologne V6, which I think was 2.8, 2.9 litres. I have driven one in the recent past. I drove one of the last models that's called a Brooklands, unofficially called a Brooklands.
yeah.
That's the colour of paint used on the Brooklands green. And I have never had a reaction driving a car in a test um, of the same magnitude as I had driving that Capri. A number of people who were waving and honking the horns, flashing the lights. I only drove a handful of miles.
Mm,
The reaction it inspired was quite incredible. So I think that says a great deal about it. It
it
says a great
does.
deal about the affection in which they held. As I say, I saw a 280 injection a couple of days ago on a low loader. As my namesake, one of my namesakes out there, actually owns one. Someone else in Ayrshire. I used to see it when I worked in a place called Irvine at the office window. Every now and then, I'd see the red Capri going past, and I think that guy's got the same name as me. Which and he was lumbered with. Let's be honest, poor
Yeah.
soul. I do pity him. There you go. But yeah, the Capri. I mean, obviously started out as a fastback. It then became a hatchback. Became quite a practical car. It was a car for if you had a small family. It was still ideal. It wasn't up to the standards of a hot hatch in terms of handling or performance, but it did give you a taste of that world with quite a lot of style and a fair bit of practicality. So you can understand why it was so successful.
Mm, yeah. Yeah.
So
We all want one. Let's
I'm
go
going
and
to
get
call it a
one.
banger though.
Yeah. Well, the thing was, my local garage, one of the mechanics had one, and the garage owner also has two CVs, and he said to me, "I can get just about any part for a two CV. For a full Capri, you can get nothing." So he was actually fabricating body parts because there is virtually nothing available, which is quite incredible when you think
Yeah,
about
when
how
you think
popular
about
they
it.
were.
Well, absolutely. I mean, these things sold like hotcakes.
Mm,
I think the last one was sold 86, probably into 87. I
yeah.
think the stocks would have run out. But I remember back in about 83, 84, people across the road had a 2.8 injection as well. And that was when it was brand new.
Did they give you a lift, David, at all?
No, no,
No. Oh,
look,
that's a shame.
you should know by now, James, that people who live across the road from me, whether on a Ford Capri or a hovercraft, do not ever offer me a lift.
Well, that's why I
Um,
said that, David. I
I
was
know.
I was being unpleasant. I do apologise.
No, you don't. It's perfectly, it's perfectly accurate. How old was I then? Be about 15 with the hovercraft. I'd be about 18 with the Capri,
Mm,
and yeah, they didn't offer me a lift. Um, but there we go. I don't know if they actually. I wonder if they actually put a bag of cement in the boot
mm,
because the Capri was so light at the rear. Everything was it was a bit like the Jaguar E-Type. It was everything up front
mm.
and nothing much over the rear axle. It could become a little bit skittish, shall we say, And the way to get the best out of one, basically to keep it on the road, was to stick something heavy in the back, like a bag of cement. And a lot of rear drive cars used to be the case. People did that. I believe you are familiar with that technique.
Absolutely, yeah, that's right. Yeah, a packet of spuds or as you say, a bag of sand, and yeah, that would make a lot of sense, especially in the
Yeah.
winter.
Yeah, but the thing with the Capri is lightning never struck twice for Ford. Obviously, the Capri stopped. They brought out the Probe. They brought out the Cougar, and neither of them sold anything like the numbers of the Capri. Times had just moved on.
Yeah,
But if you
that's
see,
right.
but if you still see a Capri out there, people will flock to it. It's just got that sort of magnetic attraction. So obviously, in spite of having said it was a banger earlier, I was just talking nonsense usual. Of course, it's a classic, and it's more than entitled to that status in my view.
Absolutely, David. Yeah, it's two thumbs up from us. It's yeah, that Hall of Fame that we're building. We can just reverse one into it now.
Let's go and find that blue one I saw the other day. It looked in good condition.
Yeah,
Well, we've got another break coming up, but before we do that, James, I want to know
yeah,
your opinion on this.
mm,
Uh, I do with capris. It's
yeah.
to do with wheels.
Oh
Well,
right.
capris are
Oh,
wheels, obviously, depends. Oh, got a set of wheels, mate. But we're
yeah,
talking about wheels, wheel size.
yeah.
What do you think? Big wheels or small wheels? What would you
Well,
prefer?
it depends what fills the arches. Actually, I mean, strangely enough, I've been looking at new tyres for the Baby Shark, and they're only 13 inch, so they're actually not that big.
No.
And yeah, I've got 10 inch on the Mini Cooper, so those are tiny wheels, and there's obviously a big story attached to that because GKN and you sort of had to build tiny brakes and suspension bits and all sorts. So that's sort of quite a story in itself. But whatever's appropriate. I mean, I suppose I'm on the tiny side of wheels really, apart from the larger ones which are on the Land Rover. But yeah, I mean, whatever is appropriate really, whatever fits and looks right.
I prefer smaller wheels.
Mm,
For the
yeah.
simple reason, the better ride comfort.
Mm,
Obviously, the wheel actually should be scaled
actually,
to be proportionate with
yeah,
the size of the wheels. But the trouble is, you see a lot of cars nowadays, and they've got wheels the size of a blooming flying saucer.
yeah,
And yeah, they might look okay. Some of them do, some of them don't. But the ride quality isn't what it could be. And the reason for that is, of course, is so much unsprung weight. You want to keep that down in the car. That was what I was always told anyway. And so, yeah, smaller wheels and tyres. Yeah, you could have nice low profile tyres, nice wide tyres, and keep the weight down and
Well,
get
it
a
is. Yeah,
comfortable
it
ride.
is important. Yeah, when I had my Shed 7 a few years ago, I mean that basically had balloon tires, so there was nothing low profile about it at all, but it was marvelously comfortable because
Shed 7.
yeah.
Did they burn the disco down?
I don't know about that.
Right. Just
Uh,
checking.
this-
Yeah.
but yeah, that had big fat old tires, and yeah, you compared it to the new generation of limo, and yeah, you'd feel every single pinprick in the road,
Hmm.
whereas with my one, it sailed everywhere.
Yeah. I mean,
Mm,
you had give me a good example. It's a Lotus Elan M100, which I bang on about every now and
yeah,
then. But the earlier ones, I feel like the Phase 1 cars, had 15-inch alloys, 15-inch wheels.
mm,
The Phase 2 had more attractive wheels, 16-inch wheels, and the ride quality suffered. It stuck to the road even better than the Phase 1, which was no easy feat, let me tell you. But you did feel that you get a bit more, your spine get a bit more of a workout in a Phase 2,
yeah,
whereas in the original LAN, it had very, very good ride qualities indeed. I mean, the Phase 2 was okay, but by comparison or in comparison, it wasn't quite as good. And the only difference between them really in that sense was the wheels. You're increasing the amount of unsprung weight.
yeah,
But there we go. So yeah, I'd always go for smaller wheels and keep the unsprung weight down, and try to limit the impact on my back, as it were. But I'm a
mm.
bit biased because I've got a damaged back as it is. Anyway, we'll take a quick break there, and we shall return with more nonsense. This is Bangers and Classics with a newsflash. Our campaign to have lead-free pencils in schools has been successful, and to celebrate, we are going to offer free skiing holidays for pensioners to the EU Butter Mountain. And we are back again after that break. We had a challenge this week,
Did we?
which see, I knew
Did we,
you would
David?
Yeah, I knew James was going to
Is that
say
the
if he,
case?
yeah, because he couldn't find the email I sent him. So, so this is going to be quite interesting. The challenge was, and one of us has done it. Other one's going to be busking. The
Yeah,
challenge was to find a 1970s BL saloon car
yeah,
with at least 3 months MOT
yeah.
for under 6,000 quid, which is quite a lot for a BL car. Let's be honest. But that was a challenge, and to give James a chance, I'll give you a couple of examples I found.
Well, I
Uh,
might have found one, David. You never know. But you tell us what you've
oh,
tracked
you'll
down.
you'll let it do me because your car sales experience, James.
I don't think so.
Oh, I
But
think you probably will. Now, the first one, this one was MOT exempt, obviously, so I should have thought the age of these would be, I did find one with an MOT, but this one hasn't got an MOT. It's a blue Marina 1.8 TC with 4 doors, and what attracted me to it
yeah,
was someone has fitted it with a 1980s Pontiac Trans Am front splitter or front spoiler.
goodness me.
I don't know why you do that to Marina. But if you're interested, it's on eBay. It's 2,750 quid. It's blue. Have a look at the ad if you
Yeah,
want to. It's there. I'm making no further comment except it has got a Trans Am splitter, which appears to have been joined in the middle by a piece of aluminium. Anyway, so that was one.
yeah.
I also spotted, if I can just review my notes for a second or two, was an Austin Allegro. I think it's also on eBay.
Mm,
And again, it's of an age where it doesn't have an MOT. It's only done 21,500 miles. Dates from 1978. It's bronze, and it's got a 5-speed gearbox. And of course, it's a petrol engine.
yeah,
What? So it's a 1.5 Super Deluxe. That's it. It's never had a radio fitted at all, apparently,
right.
and it's been was dry stored. It says in the ad for 7 years in a private collection.
Yeah,
And according to the ad again, it runs like a Swiss watch.
yeah.
So it's only £2,500. That's the
Goodness me.
classified ad price.
Yeah,
That actually seems quite a reasonable buy to me.
yeah,
If you're looking for an Allegro, and I'm not going to slag them off because part of my youth, part of my childhood,
yeah,
etc. And if you like an Allegro, good luck to you, as I always say. But this one seems to be quite a decent one. The engine looks a little bit murky, as if it could do engine bay could do with a good clean.
mm,
But for 2.5 grand, what are you gonna do? What else are you gonna get for 2.5 grand? I do not know. So you've got that, and finally there was a Morris Marina, which was I believe a 1.8 Super, and is described as a good working classic car. Now there is some rust on the front valance, I can see, but it had an MOT earlier this year. It didn't have to have an MOT because it is exempt, and it was MOT'd on the 8th of May. And I've checked this; it passed, and there's no advisories. Low mileage until 2018, at which time the speedo cable broke, and then it had done 32,000 miles. So it's not going to have much more than that now. Maybe 33,000. It's £4,500. It looks okay. It's been touched up with paint. It's basically the ad's quite honest. It did a full repaint to make it perfect. But it's been mechanically overhauled. They say no visible oil leaks, and so it's only a tiny amount of welding, and it's got a heap of paperwork with the original bill of sale and the original Leyland passport. So there you go. So there's quite a lot of good things about that car. It's in white, and it's a 1.8 litre. Again, if you're looking for a Marina, that's a good one to go for. I think it will need some work to really bring up to show standard, but it is achievable, and it's achievable. I think fairly reasonably, on the face of it. So have a look at eBay. You'll find that one there. So those are my selections, James. And
Well,
not,
well, just to annoy you, David, what I've got a 1980 Triumph Dolomite 1500 HL automatic for sale, and that is it's a yeah. Let me see. I mean, it brings back lots of memories for me because I did have it wasn't a 1981, but I did have a 1500 HL automatic and also an 1850 HL automatic. So I thought, yeah, let's get another one. So what would I pay for that? Well, apparently I can make a near offer, but it's 4195, and it does look in really good condition. It's one of those cars with a badge bar at the front, so they've got all the badges attached to the front. So it's obviously someone who's looked after it. 98,000 miles apparently. I'd like to know the state of the gearbox. They say everything's jolly fine with their car. He's owned it for 2 years, but he doesn't use it very often, so he's selling it. So I think we should go down there and bid him down. And I think that would be a remarkably nice car to have. Very, very comfortable. There's a bit of wood inside, obviously. Nice velour seats, headrests, and all that guff. And the bonnet opens in the correct fashion. It's hinged at the front.
Well, it's
And
very important in a British Leyland car because they usually open quite a bit. I want to stop you there, James, for a second.
yeah,
You did say beat him down, didn't you? Because I just had visions of you putting your hobnail boots on from last week and saying you were going to beat him up. I thought
well,
that's just a bit harsh.
there you go. Well, these are tough times, and they call for tough action. So that's what I hope I'm doing. But I do need you to strong arm me in this, David, so that we can get this at the best possible price.
Right?
And then we give it away in a bangers and classics competition. I think that would go down quite well.
Yeah, probably would do. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, but with the winner,
yeah.
but who wouldn't be Matthew Corrigan? I had to get that
Uh,
in there. Sorry, Matthew, but there you
uh,
go.
but
No point in complaining, mate. You know the rules.
no, yeah.
But
But it's
yeah,
also carmine red as well, and that one of my ones was a carmine red, and yeah, beige interior. It's yeah. I'm going to have to, yeah. As soon as we finish this podcast, David, I'm off. I'm off to. I think, where am I going? Where does it say this car is? It's always a long way away from me. Hawley in Surrey. It's going to take me a few hours to get there, but I'll go. It's got a GB sticker at the back. It's got a heated rear window, so that's fantastic. It's
uh,
ready to roll.
and where can we find this car?
This one is on Car and Classic.
Right.
If you go to Car and Classic, they've got a reasonable selection. I find it's there's always a good mix of cars on there. So when I have to do
Yeah.
an emergency search, when I have to pretend that I've done research on this, I always go to Car and Classic, who haven't paid me to say this, but I find them quite good.
Yeah, I've struggled with them a little bit lately myself, I have to
Mm,
say, because I've been looking at that is usually an early point of call for me, but I couldn't
mm,
really find much what I was looking for this week on it.
yeah.
Possibly because I was looking in the wrong place as usual,
Well,
or for the wrong car. I don't think I looked for a Dolomite. I know I did. I looked on eBay for a Dolomite. I was looking for a Princess really,
well,
but
we're all
aren't we
looking for a
all? You know.
princess,
Well, yeah, I know.
aren't we, David? But
Yeah. Yeah. Whose dad owns a brewery? But
yeah.
we're not going to go there either. Right, so you're going to go for the Dolomite. I'm going
Yeah,
to go for, I think, the Marina rather than the Allegro. But if you want to buy the Allegro and save £2,000 over the Marina, then I wouldn't blame you with it at all. I really wouldn't blame you. So, right, we'll move on from that. And what do I do next? Oh, yeah, the worst or tackiest car commercial. Possibly not the worst or tackiest, but one that's particularly stuck in your mind as being a bit naff. And I can think of one that is so naff it's actually really good. Do you want to know what that is, James?
yes, please, because
Okay.
I've been looking into this for days, and I haven't quite decided which one is the tackiest yet.
No, you haven't looked yet. Dear, yeah. Well, this one is courtesy of our old chum Gavin Braithwaite Smith, who we mentioned a couple of times. Gavin runs the Petrol Blog website. It was Gavin that brought my attention, indeed the world's attention possibly, to this a few years ago when he pointed out a German advertisement for the Honda Jazz. Now, I'm informed by the people at YouTube, because I found the advert, that it dates from 1984. It certainly dates from around about that period, and it seems to feature one part someone who looks rather like a young Robin Gibb. I can't describe the advert. It's bizarre. It's ultra bizarre. The behaviour of the people in it makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. And it's so rubbish that it's actually really good. And as soon as we're finished podcasting today, I'm going to go and watch it again. So that is my choice. You'll find it on YouTube. If you just type in German Honda Jazz commercial 1984, it'll take you straight to it. Or better still, go to Petrol Blog and type in Honda Jazz in the search box, and you'll find it there. Give Gavin the hits instead of YouTube. So what we found, James, are you still looking?
Well, I didn't need to look, David, because there is one advert that plays in my head, and it is brilliant and tacky, both at the same time, and it's good old Bruce Forsyth
Good guy.
flogging Yeah, absolutely, it was a good game, and he's flogging a Chrysler. And yeah, it's a a sort of a game show format. He's doing what I would have done when I was in a showroom. Obviously, I'm showing off, like Bruce, and he throws a bucket of water over the old Chrysler. I thought it was an estate car, but I could be mistaken. And that was just to prove that it had electronic ignition. But yeah, that's quite solidly in my head as a tacky but still quite brilliant advert because
Right.
Bruce is in it.
Well, yeah, Brucey was great. When you said flogging the car, I had visions
Mm.
of him whacking it with a tree branch like Basil Fawlty hitting the Austin 1100 Countryman.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's just you, Dave. That's just the way your mind works. But no,
Well, it
it's
doesn't really work, let's be
it's
honest.
just,
It stopped working a long time ago.
yeah. But yeah, I would go and have a look at that advert. I haven't seen it for ages, so you can tell me what I've got wrong with it if you want. But it's worth finding.
The two Ronnies also flogged cars, did you know, at one
They
point?
did minis,
Yeah.
didn't they? Yeah.
All sorts, I think. They
Yeah, yeah,
did a few.
Spike. Yeah, yeah, Spike did
Yeah.
minis, didn't he? Because
Spike.
Spike didn't take any money for those adverts at all. He did it because he thought it was helping, the country and stuff. So that
Uh,
was quite remarkable, really.
Spike Milligan. There
Spike
was
Milligan,
there was a genius.
absolutely.
He was mad, but oh boys, yeah, you couldn't dislike Spike. I really
No,
don't think you could. If you dislike Spike, I think the problem is with you, really, rather than anything else.
well, that's
And
right. Isn't the great story about Peter Sellers buying a brand new? I can't remember which car it was. I think it might have been a Rolls Royce or a Mercedes. I can't remember, but he heard a squeak, and Spike Milligan ended up getting in the boot of to find this squeak, and they were stopped by the police who said, can I look in your boots there and all that. And he opened it, and there was Spike Milligan there. He said, "Oh, it's you," and he just got back into his patrol car because he just thought, "Well, it's Spike Milligan and it's Peter Sellers mucking about in cars." But apparently, that is a true story.
yeah, see, that's what made life great in those
Yeah,
days. The maniacs, but wonderful maniacs. What can you say? We do miss them.
we do.
We really do miss them. I know they've been gone for a long time, but they made the mark, and I think it's an indelible mark, at least as far as I'm concerned. Anyway, one more thing for this week.
All right.
Yeah, we'll got to get a value out of James. I mean,
Yeah.
what innovation was, in your opinion, best for the motorists? That's from the 1960s to date.
Right.
Something like traction control, remote central locking, high level brake lights, fiery dice, that kind of thing. What would you go for, James?
I don't know, David. I'd like to hear what you decided first because maybe I still didn't find that email that,
You
that
still not
you
found the
sent to me
email.
on Wednesday at 10:22. But there
Yeah.
you go.
Yeah, the only reason I know the time of it is I've got it right in front of me to remind me what I'm supposed to be talking about. Yes, this is as close as we get to a script in this.
Yeah,
Is as an email says, "We should we talk about these things?"
that's right. Yeah. Well,
And
essentially, David is my carer, and he just tells me what to do, and I just go along with it. And
oh god, you're in
yeah,
trouble, mate. If I'm your
yeah.
carer, God,
Well, there you go.
I
I mean,
can't look after myself. I'm not fit to look after
yeah.
myself.
I just
Uh,
have to assign a small part of my vast fortune to David. Apparently, he drew this up. It's all legally,
Fast
completely
fortune. Oh, right,
completely
hang on.
proper,
Oh,
completely proper. And
proper governor, proper job.
so,
Yeah.
David, what couldn't you drive without them?
What can I drive without? Let's come in. Crikey. Traction control, yeah, it's all good and well, but the best form of traction control is your right foot, let's be honest. Anti-lock brakes, yeah, probably go with those. Very, very useful. You should learn how to cadence brake anyway, because on some surfaces, anti-lock brakes don't really work very well, such as snow, I found. If you don't know what cadence braking is, look it up and learn how to do it. It's quite important. Remote central locking, yeah, I do like that. So, anti-lock brakes, yeah, from a safety point of view, but just from being an incredibly lazy point of view, I'm going to go remote central locking, which was in the first car I ever owned from 1988. Was a Renault 11 Turbo, and it was remote central locking, and I had hours of fun getting the lights to flash on and off from people walking past it, thinking they'd set the alarm off or something, because very few cars had remote central locking in those days. So yeah, for all the fun it gave me, I'm going to go remote central locking. What do you think, James? You're gonna
Um,
you're gonna go something like infotainment screens, aren't you? You know, just touch
Yeah,
screens.
yeah, quite possibly. Yeah, yeah, you know me too well. Strange enough, yeah, I experienced ABS when I was starting to sell cars because very few cars had ABS. So you had
Mm,
Mercedes and you had BMW, and that was it really. And it was quite interesting to be, in the back of a car when someone was slamming on the brakes. But as you know, I don't think I've ever met anybody with certain exceptions, who actually knows how to use ABS brakes or how it makes their lives, how it would preserve their life in an emergency situation. I don't think anybody knows what it actually does, which is a great shame, really, isn't it? And as you say, cadence braking is a life skill that most people in certainly Sweden in the 60s and 70s knew how to do.
yeah.
Just as it would just pass by osmosis from generation to generation. Um, and yeah, I suppose in a way I do agree with you about ABS brakes, even though no one knows how to use them um, at all. And yeah, all those electronic devices, I'm really not quite sure exactly what they do. They just are something to go wrong and something to fail and give you a problem at MOT time.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I did think of something earlier on, and then it's gone out of my head as I went on this rant about ABS brakes. But
Well, it's like traction control. Just going back to talking about tacky and rubbish ads,
yeah.
there was one I think for the Vauxhall
Oh,
Corsa.
David, you sound as though you're at the bottom of a bucket.
Do I?
Yeah.
Oh, hang on a second. I'll, sorry, James, just climbing out the bucket.
Oh, that's good.
Right, I've now climbed out of the bucket. Yeah, we're talking about tacky ads and rubbishy ads.
Yeah.
There was a Vauxhall Corsa ad once. Somebody was asking for directions, and he was being given directions by somebody else. Said, "Oh, there's a corner there. You might want to use the traction control." And that I thought, what? The car's handling is that poor? You're going to require to use traction control?
Yeah.
Get a better car, mate. That was it. I thought whoever scripted that ad, yeah, you mentioned traction control in it, but it was such a poor mention. Oh dear, no, not good at all. But yeah, that was. I
No,
just thought I'd chuck that in.
absolutely. No, I mean, yeah, I mean, for me, I think it's two things. I do still like the front hinged bonnet. I think every car should have a front hinged bonnet, so you can dive in rather than bash your head on what's there. Or the little lever I've got underneath the seat on the Innocenti, which I pull up and it opens the hatchback, and that was from the 1970s. So that made life a lot easier. I used to have a friend who had a Mercedes where you pressed the button and the boot opened, and he came round to my house, and everybody else who came round, he would go outside and demonstrate to everybody how he could open the boot without touching it. But I could do that beforehand. I could do that with my 1970s Innocenti. So yeah, bonnets and boots. That's what I like.
Yeah, only problem with the remote boot release was not electronic. Is cable snapping. It's trying to replace the cable.
Yeah,
I have had that myself in
mm,
cars with remote boot releases,
yeah.
and the cable snap, and you can't get in the blooming thing.
Well, when mine goes, you can come round and do it, David. I'll rely on your experience.
Oh no, I'll just take a hammer to it probably or
Really?
something like that. Yeah,
Oh,
oh
okay.
god, yeah. The story of me building the wardrobe once, my wife dines out in that story. It was only saved from total destruction by the arrival of a friend I'd phoned earlier.
Yeah.
The opportune arrival, but of a friend I'd phoned earlier. So yeah, I'm not the best at fixing things. You know, can't fix nothing, Governor. He's an idiot. Well, and on that note, I think we shall call it a day for this week's podcast. Thanks very much for listening. We hope that you join us again next week. And simply say cheerio.
Yeah, and it's goodbye from me. So yeah, see you next week. And hopefully on YouTube, you won't get exactly the same program that you got the previous week. I mean, that was just a test because there's only about 3 people listen on YouTube. But yeah, that was a slight mistake, and I'll put my hand up to that one.
Yeah. Well, of course, it might happen again. You'll be so excited about your new Dolomite.
Absolutely, yeah,
So yeah, it could happen again.
yeah,
Anyway, cheerio.
yeah. I'm off to find a dolly.